Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of About Abroad, where it's my job to introduce you to people who have built amazing lives for themselves in various foreign corners of the globe. We're talking with expats and thought leaders about moving abroad, remote work, visas, and all the fun and practical knowledge that you need to know to follow in their footsteps. If you've ever dreamed of making a life for yourself overseas, maybe working remotely or embracing long-term travel, retiring or studying abroad, or even just taking a peek inside life beyond your borders, you've landed in the right place. This episode is brought to you in partnership with Wanderers Wealth. One of the greatest challenges and also one of the greatest opportunities for digital nomads, expats, people who are building businesses abroad is in the world of international taxes. It's not the most fun subject to talk about, but it's one of the most important and confusing that I hear about all the time from those of you in the audience. So I've had Kathy on the show before. She's the CEO of Wanderers Wealth. And afterwards, I became a customer of hers because her global tax strategy design course is incredible. It literally walks you through all the steps that you need to take in order to take advantage of the international tax system that is set up to actually help those of us that are living this international lifestyle. So it's highly recommended. You can find the link in the show notes for her global tax strategy design course. Check it out and let me know what you think. My guest today is a very special one. Her name is Deanna, and she is the leader of the team that is behind the scenes creating About Abroad. They're called DSV Digital, and she is their CEO and founder. So it was amazing to bring her on and talk about building location-independent businesses, immigrating to another country, because she's originally from the Philippines, currently lives in the US, and also travel in general. She's been to over 80 countries. She's got many more to come, I think. And so we talked all about living in the Philippines, what life is like there, immigrating to another country, traveling with a partner, traveling with a dog, and building teams that allow everyone to live and work where they create their best life. I really appreciated her vulnerability and talking about breaking tradition from her home country and going off on her own path and what that was like. And I think that can provide a good bit of inspiration for anybody who's feeling a little bit scared about making that leap of faith. So I really had a great time with this one, learned a lot about a new corner of the world that I now have to go visit. And I hope you will enjoy and help me in welcoming Deanna to About Abroad. You know what I was just realizing, Deanna, is that I believe this is actually the first time, and this is kind of wild to think because we've been working together for like a couple years now. I think this is the first time we actually met on a video call.
No. We did a video call the first time that from the initial phone call. Then it transitioned to WhatsApp. And after that, we used Doist. You got our to use Doist. So they love it. John loves it.
Nice. I love it.
And this is the second time.
You're right. So it has been a while though, but it feels, it's weird how in this world of remote work that we're in, it doesn't feel like that. I feel like we know each other super well. We work together all the time and we're communicating in multiple places all the time. And so when I was getting ready to hop on this call with you, I was like, is this really the first time? So it's the second time in a couple years. In any case, it's amazing that we're able to collaborate across the world together. And it feels so personal.
I know. It feels so surreal because we haven't seen each other in person. But I think that once we've seen each other in person, I just feel that we have known each other for so long.
Yeah.
And also it's so crazy because every time that we collaborate together, it's okay, what time zone is he in? What time zone is he in? To make sure that, the Manila time zone, my time zone, and your time zone.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. Well, for some context for people listening, Deanna is the CEO and the founder behind the company that really I lean on to make this podcast. So if you're someone who enjoys this podcast, you have her and her team to thank because I just show up and do the recordings and you guys handle everything else. And I'm forever grateful for that. So it's cool to finally bring you on the show because you actually exemplify a lot of what I like to talk about on the show. And it just so happens that you also are a core part of it in the background. So I'm super excited to finally bring you on and hear a bit more about your story because there's a lot that I don't know.
Our pleasure. We're always here to serve you. And I still remember when we have started working together and now how many episodes do you have? And I was listening to the episode that you just had yesterday. I think it was forgot the name, but I was like, oh my God, that's it's like a long time ago already. How many episodes? That's so cool. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a journey. I've learned a lot, and yeah, I'm just happy that people enjoy it, and it's fun working with you guys. And so, anyway, I'm curious right now. I have no idea where you are. I gather I know we're both in Europe, and you don't normally reside in Europe. So, where are you at the moment?
So we're currently but we're currently in an Airbnb. We've decided to stay here for for 2 months, and we're in Czech Republic. So we were just in Copenhagen, I think 2 weeks ago, and now we decided, okay, we're just going to stay in an Airbnb in Czech Republic. So Drew actually went to school here, and since then we have visited Czech Republic every summer, Prague to be specific. So it's kind of like a getaway for us.
Cool. And home is normally back in the States. You're like, if I gather correctly, like you're from the Philippines, you live in the US, but you guys are like world travelers.
I lived 6 months in Philippines and then half a year in the States. So because like my family's still all back home, and I can't go for quite a long time without me seeing them again. Makes me sad whenever I travel. But yeah, that's why I do my best to go home every 6 months.
Wow, that's cool. So you when you go home back, and you call home the Philippines still. So yeah, I always think that's kind of interesting, right? Like when you've been in one place for long, like there is a transition. I was talking, I'm here in Germany right now, and I was talking with an American expat who's been living here in Germany for 5 years. And she was just telling me how the other day she said to her family for the first time, like, oh yeah, I'm back home now. And she was talking about Germany, not the US. And it just rolled off her tongue. She didn't think anything of it, but it really like caught her family off guard. And they were like, wait, what do you mean? That's home now? Like, and they had this whole thing about it. And I just found it kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of an interesting like thing. At some point, that transition happens.
Yeah, actually, it's so hard to give home a definition because we also lived in Bangkok for a year and a half. No, actually 2 years, and then Vietnam, Hanoi for a year and a half. So 2017, that's Hanoi, and then 2018 to 2020, that's Bangkok.
Wow. And home now is, I mean, well, home will always be the Philippines, it sounds like.
Yes.
But are you you guys are spending a good bit of your time back in the US now? Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Gotcha. Okay. That's quite a distance to go all the time, right? Like back and forth between Southeast Asia before you're like in Philippines, US, and then you're trying to mix in like enjoying travel, which I think is a core part of your relationship and your personal identity. Like I saw somewhere, I think, how many countries have you been to off the top of your head?
I would think so 81.
81. I mean, that's an insane number. Like that's a really high. It might not feel like it because, you and Drew are together. So, but that's a huge number. You've seen a lot of the world.
Yeah, I think I'm just very persistent I hold a Philippine passport, so I'm just very persistent. I like challenging the system. So for example, it's so hard for me to get a Venezuelan visa, but I did all of paperwork, everything to get it done and to get the visa. I got rejected multiple times for Australian visa. It's because of the ties that you have in the Philippines. Like if you're single, you might just, hop out and decide to stay in that country. So that's one of the main reasons that I think they deny a person in terms of accepting it to their country, even as a tourist. Yeah, but I love traveling, and now that I have the opportunity to, work while traveling, that makes it more exciting.
Did you intentionally create that opportunity, like to have a location independent business? And is it correct to call it a location independent business?
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yes, that was my main goal when I started it. But before I started my business, I was a marketing director in Hong Kong for one of the accounting firms. So we deal with expats for filing their taxes. So I fly from time to time to Hong Kong, to South. I was handling Southeast Asia. And from there, it was kind of like living in the hotels. And that's a light bulb moment that, okay, oh my God, like this is work, but I'm in Macau in one of the tallest towers or bungee jumping towers and having coffee, but I'm working. So that sparked my interest in just, continue looking for opportunities to work and at the same time travel. And that also means that I always stick to my core, which is my why. So when I started the business, I was like, I want to make sure that if I'm going to start a business, I want to have my staff, have the opportunity as well to travel or to be at home, even if it's like, going to a staycation or local, just locally in the Philippines. It gives them a sense of work and life balance, because for the longest time before the pandemic, I think the work and life balance were gone or fading away for corporate companies.
100% true, man. It's one of the great things that I love about this movement towards more distributed work. And you mentioned your why, which I love. Like I love asking people like, what's your why? Simon Sinek's Start With Why is like one of my favorite books around, like, connected to business. And so I'm always asking like, what is your why? Asking myself, what is my why behind things? And I think it's a great place to like start from. And it's cool that became core to your business, because now you can live the lifestyle that you want. But not only that, your employees get that capability as well.
Yeah, and if for example, like Jack right now, one of her staff is that, oh, is it okay if I'm just going to fly to Siargao for a week, and I'll make sure that there is the internet there, and I'll make sure that the job is getting done, and I know that if I trust him that he's gonna get it done. But I don't want to clip someone's wings, like especially like I think for me, travel fuels my passion, fuels my soul, recharges me. So I also want them to to feel the same way as how invigorating it is. And you come back refreshed and with a newer perspective. Maybe you're thinking of something that you can't solve last week, but since you're energized, and nature is something that is quite magical. I think people who walk, like, they have can solve a lot of problems. So even just by walking and seeing other places, trying
Totally.
cultures, meeting locals. Yeah.
It's all, I mean, it's actually like scientifically, like it's factual that if you spend more time outside in nature, if you change up your environment, stimulates different parts of the brain and actually induces more creativity. And so when we think about, like, if you go back to like the basic principles of what a vacation is supposed to be, like, even if you get your standard 2 weeks per year, like those 2 weeks are meant to be time for you to recharge the batteries, right? And hopefully you get more than 2 weeks, but people would often take those 2 weeks and go travel somewhere, and that's like supposed to be recharging your batteries. And so it actually makes sense when you go back and think about it. But like for some reason, we've confined it to those X number of weeks, like the standard work day, the standard work week, the standard work year. And it doesn't actually really make sense. Like if you embrace location independence, allow people to change up their scenery a little bit, have a non-linear work day so they can work, when it makes most sense for them and kind of craft their perfect work day, they can actually be stimulated throughout the entire day. So like as someone in your position who has like a whole team working under them, like you would want that for your team. That's how you're going to get the most out of them, not like restrict them to some little like box in terms of like time and space.
Oh, definitely. And you can feel that your staff is not burnt out, but nearing that age, and they just need a breather, or they just need kind of little vacation, or even just going to a coffee shop just to breathe. So we give them the flexibility on whatever they want to do throughout the day, as long as the work gets done. And we try our best to do things with quality, but from time to time there's burnout, or there's something that they just have to pause, take a pause for a while and look back on what mistakes they have done, and from there they can analyze and then solve that. So it's amazing on how a pause or a break or a breather really works.
Yeah, it totally does. So what's the plan for you guys now? Like, are you on the road for a while? You mentioned you're going to be there for a couple months. Is it then back home, wherever home is, or is there more travel on the horizon?
Yeah, so we will be going to Poland, I think, over the weekend, and after that we'll be staying. I'll just be staying with my dog in Prague until September.
Oh, you traveling with your dog? Oh, he's famous. The audience can't see him. I'm fortunate I get to. We're fellow dog travelers together. Yeah, he's famous. Like he's like Instagram famous.
Oh my God, he got stung by a bee earlier. And one funny thing about traveling with a dog is I didn't realize how hard it is to find loopholes on how you can travel with them. Especially like bringing them on planes. It's just so hard. But I'm glad that we're able able to navigate through the situation and allowed us to travel with him.
Yeah. Oh, he's adorable. People are missing out on seeing the cutest pug alive here. But yeah, that is something I've discovered as well. I mean, if people have listened to this show before, they know like I travel with Coda, my 50-pound, 23-kilo Siberian Husky, and he's been like all over the world with me. And it's not ideal. Like honestly, in retrospect, I probably wouldn't do it all again. I just was a little bit naive and was like, yeah, sure, you can just take a dog wherever. And and then I figured out like, oh, yeah, this is kind of hard. But anyway, I mean, it is the cool thing I think is like it is possible. I hear tons of people say, oh, I can't travel so much because I have a dog, cat, whatever, and it's not possible. So just that's their excuse, their reason for not doing it. But it is like as you said, like it is possible. You've fought through all these loopholes to get like visas to go to different places around the world. So you're like, I can do this. I can get a dog in.
Yeah, I can get a dog in. So sorry. So we were in Copenhagen, and his other foot, I think there was some glass in there, or stepped on a glass, and the bill was like $600, and it was only for cleaning and for a vet to check on him. And then now we're in Czech Republic, and he got stung by a bee on the other foot. And guess how much it is?
I'm super curious. How much?
$20.
What?
Yeah.
That's crazy. That is wild. And like Copenhagen and Prague are not that far apart, nor like really that different. I mean, if you just got dropped there, you wouldn't know. I mean, they're both like just beautiful European cities that otherwise shouldn't have such a crazy disparity between them. I found the same thing in Spain. Like vet bills in the US are just like crazy expensive. And living in Spain, like I've had to do like multiple rounds of, shots, of vaccinations, checkups, problems, whatever. And I'm always like amazed. I'm like, really? It's like $40. That's it? Are you sure? Like, can I tip you?
Because you're prepared to shell out how much you're shelling out in the States. Because that's you don't know any difference. Like in the Philippines before he traveled. So from Philippines to the States, now he's in Europe.
Wow.
So he traveled quite a lot, this dog. I got him neutered there, and it only cost like $100, or like 5,000 pesos. But in the States, it's like 1,000. Like, how can it be times 10 if it's the same tit that they're gonna use?
It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, and that applies to humans as well. Like sometimes I'm like, I got sick when I went back to the U.S. like back in November, and I just went for like I wasn't feeling good. I had like just some kind of like flu. It wasn't COVID, but I had to do a COVID test and get like some antibiotics and whatever, and it was like $600 or something. And I was just like, literally, this took 20 minutes, and like you did barely anything. And I just, my mindset had gotten used to being in more of a European mindset towards medical care, and I'm used to everything being covered completely by my health insurance, or maybe having to pay like 20 euros or something. So it was really like reverse culture shock for me.
Oh yeah, and it's also similar to my experience, because it's also a reverse culture shock, but in a different way. Because I came from Philippines, and everything is cheap there, and when you go to the States, bringing a dog, it's a whole different story.
Absolutely. Did you grow up in the Philippines?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Born and raised there. Yep.
Born and raised there. Is there like an official date when you immigrated to the US, or do you even say that you immigrated to the US?
So I am permanent resident of the US. So it took us a while I think just 2 years ago, but I go back and forth since 2016 every summer, and it took us a while to decide to live in the States, because Asia is like super close to my heart. I'm from there, but you can just hop on a $50 plane, go to Thailand, try, curry, or try, mango sticker rice, and then go back home and sleep. So that's how battle up that until now. Sometimes, I would just stare in the abyss and would dream about like, oh, would it be so nice if you just like fly to Indonesia today and then come back on weekends? I just miss that.
Yeah, of course. I can imagine. I mean, when you jump in a cab in LA or something and have to go spend $100 to get to a restaurant, you think, I could have taken a flight to Thailand for that.
Yeah, I also think about that. Like, for example, because we live in Phoenix now, fly from Phoenix to New York, it takes 5 hours. My mind is always like, oh, can you go to like South America for those hours? Go to South America for those hours.
Yeah, your mindset gets like, you get very jaded. For me, I used to think when I was growing up, I grew up in North Carolina. Carolina, and we would drive to Miami a lot because I was born in Miami. My whole family's from there. And so we would go do like Christmases and stuff. And it was a 15-hour drive. And like we would just wake up in the morning and just go do it. Did breakfast there, dinner in Miami, 15 hours, you're there. And then it was nothing to me. And I remember like first coming to Europe when I was like in my 20s and hearing people talk about like, oh yeah, it's like a 2-hour train ride away. Like or like it's a 5-hour drive, it's like really far. And I'm thinking that's nothing, like no big deal. But now my mindset's totally shifted and I'm like 5 hours in the car, that's ridiculous. Like we're breaking this up into 2 days and your mindset just totally shifts.
Yeah. So you traveled, was it the first time that you came to Europe when you're in 20s? Was it a study abroad?
Yeah, exactly. I did like a study abroad when I was in college, and I'd started traveling a little bit before that, got the travel bug like at like 18. Actually, I think I like always had the travel bug, but it wasn't really in my mindset that you could travel. I was like dreaming of exploring the world, but just didn't really know how to do that, I guess. And then when I turned 18, I went down to Australia for like a month. I'd like saved up my whole senior year and was like, I'm like diving straight into travel and going across the world and was just fascinated, like totally blown away. And then then just had in my mind, like I'm going to use my college years to travel as much as I can because I thought those are the only years you get to do that. Then you have to grow up and have a real life. And so yeah. And when I went to Europe, I really fell in love with Europe in terms of like just being able to go country to country and have such like distinct differences between them, just languages changing and cultures and food and landscape. It was also kind of coming back to the time and space thing. It was all just so quick and accessible that I like couldn't get enough of that. So I'd always hoped I could return and spend more time in Europe. And it was only in the last, 5, 6, 7 years that I was able to make that happen.
Yeah, it's really surprising on how the culture is very, very rich in each and every countries in Europe. And by that, it also enriches how you perceive the world and how you perceive or how you talk to another human being that is different, was born in a different country. I always say that different people from different parts of the world, we always look at the same sky.
Yeah.
Like even when I was little, I was like, oh, maybe someone out there is also looking at the same sky as me. And now it's crazy that like you fly from Asia to Australia and there's like another, but a whole of, lot of people there speaking different languages. And the food for me, I love food. So also one of the things that I do when I travel, or one of the things that fuels me.
Me too. I kind of associate travel with food in a way. And I think it's very bad when I go on like a extended vacation, like I'm kind of doing this year. It's like I'm traveling a lot this year and I'm sort of like, can't just eat my way through this. This is bad.
Yeah. I have a friend, Mark Weens, migrationology. So he started like way back eating around the world. And his 7-year-old kid, has been to more like 50 countries already since he was a baby, has tried Afghanistan food, has tried like very, very cultured. And that was like, oh my God, like this kid can speak French, this kid can speak Farsi. What else can he speak? Like it's so amazing.
Oh, that's incredible. I'm fascinated by this and I can honestly nerd out on it and never get enough. Like just seeing people from different parts of the world and how they, like you telling your story about like living in the Philippines and just thinking about like, oh, I could go to Indonesia or I could go to Thailand and like have a curry. Like that sounds so foreign to someone who's not really had the opportunity to travel. Like that just sounds not real. Almost. And it is, I think that's the cool thing is that it is real. Like you lived that.
Yeah. And it's very fascinating for me too, because when we lived in the States, there's always going to be comparison for me because I love comparing different cultures and, learning whatever I can learn from different people, from different nationalities. When we lived in the States, the first time that I went there, we went from snow to the beach to the desert. So everything you have already in America. Like that's why I think, if I'm not mistaken, 30% of Americans has passport. And that's why it's hard for them to go outside of the bubble.
Yeah.
But it's hard for them to live outside of the bubble because there's always like going to be, oh, I'm just going to be traveling to California and go to the beach or to Arizona to go to the desert. So for me, it's like, oh, wow. Didn't even thought about that when I was a kid because Philippines is so small and it's like island to island. So you go by boat.
Yeah, is that true? So you travel around by boat in the Philippines a lot? Like to give some context, I have never been to the Philippines and I have a really strong desire to go there. It's one of the countries that like I can't really explain why. Like I mean it has its obvious reasons, but at the same time like there's almost 300 countries out there or something. So like you could have a fascination with any one of them, and for some reason the Philippines is one of those countries that on my mind like I really need to go visit, but I haven't been there and I don't know a ton. So maybe you can enlighten me and maybe some of the audience about like life in the Philippines in general.
Yeah, definitely. So I grew up in the Philippines and I live in the southeast part, which is Albay. It's not in Manila, so it's 10 hours drive if you'll be driving from my hometown to Manila. So way before I graduated college, I was still in high school. I always dream of like, oh, what's the next barangay or what's the next city outside of our city? So there's always a curiosity in my mind that fascinates me that my classmate lives in like 30 minutes away, but it's a different, scenery already that you can see. And the Philippines has 7,107 islands, and now
What?
it's more. Yes,
7,000?
yes, 7,107. If I'm not sure how many percent is inhabited, but we've been named as like one of the best vacation spots, which is Boracay. You have to go there. Your team is there, so you
Yes,
have to
I
go.
do. I'm obligated. It's like not even a question.
Yeah, so it's amazing. And Boracay is it's 7 kilometers, so it's located in Visayas. It's one of the most go-to of travelers or people who wanted to see the Philippines, which for me is a party island. But when my curiosity grew and grew when I started traveling inside the Philippines, I look at the map and I look at some of the islands that doesn't have electricity yet, does not even have. I went to Romblon when Romblon is it's not as famous, it's not as touristy compared to Boracay. So my gist is I have always the curiosity to travel to different islands that not only are touristy, but also to see the people who live there that are part of me. So yeah. So we do have Siargao. So Siargao is now becoming Bali. So it's now becoming Bali. It's a surfer's paradise. A lot of like vegetarian, vegan, a lot of Europeans go there. There's a charm there that they went there for a vacation and 5 years later they never left. So and now it's becoming easier to get visas. Tonya has I think it's a remote work visa.
Yep.
And I also heard that from a friend of mine just this year, after COVID, Thailand has opened for a 2 years remote work visa.
Oh, wow. I didn't know about that one. That's cool.
Yeah. So I was fascinated because it was so hard to extend visas whenever you're not from the country or not residing in that country. So if you go to Philippines and you decide to stay there for a long time, like for example, a year, you're only allowed to stay there for maximum 6 months, right? So what they do is it's called visa run. So they would go to Thailand and then come back and the visa is going to be refreshed so you can stay longer. So yeah, there's a lot of things that I think it's getting more easier now. I also think that the pandemic has shifted the remote work culture 360.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is regarding the visas, so this is always a fascinating thing. So do you feel like Philippines is pretty open in terms of like if I know you've had your challenges going to other countries because of your Philippines passport, which I think is something we should talk about too, but like people coming to the Philippines, I gather the Philippines is pretty open in terms of accepting tourists, right?
Oh yeah, we love tourists because that's one of the source of income of the Philippine tourism. And I think there's no fee for Americans to go there, Canadians, Europeans. There's no fee for the visa unless you plan to stay longer. But we're pretty open. We're pretty welcoming, especially like if it's your first time. Sometimes they would have a band waiting outside the airport, just greeting everyone. If they know that plane has a lot of like first timers, it's pretty amazing.
Wow. Is there a strong difference between like the mainland culture and the island culture? I mean, you have 7,000 islands, so maybe it's kind of hard to quantify that. But like, would you? It sounds like you grew up on the mainland, and the island seems sort of like foreign to you in a way. Is that correct to say?
Yeah. I would think so too. So there's Manila is a city business district. So everyone from the province that's the dream to go to Manila. It's like coming to New York to work. So, but a lot of people from Manila has retired and they go to the provinces or would buy a beach house, would buy a nice house after to wind down, when they retire. So it's always that for like the longest time since I think I was born.
I got you. Yeah. So like people grow up outside of Manila on the mainland thinking like, oh, I want to go to Manila and work. And then people from Manila are thinking, oh, I want to have a place outside. It's exactly like New York or something where you're like, yeah, I have my city flat, but like I also want to like my place in the countryside in upstate or something like that.
Definitely. It's really funny because you always want what you don't have.
Yeah.
So it also applies to you always want to see what you haven't seen yet because we're all humans and we're all curious about places, things, etc. So I just love travel.
It's cool that you've baked it into your life so much. I mean, you kind of live like being from the Philippines, spending a good bit of your time you get to go back home. And I'm sure you're not just like sitting in one place while you're there and then your work allows you to travel. We'll be right back to the show after a quick break for a note from our sponsor. This season is brought to you by my good friends over at Insured Nomads. They're the absolute best in the business when it comes to providing health, travel, and medical insurance for nomads, expats, and really just all forms of world travelers. I know insurance is often something that's overlooked when we're fantasizing about traveling the world, but it's absolutely necessity that we address this because often the policy you have in your home country isn't going to cover you while you're abroad. And it's also a requirement, as a lot of people may not realize, to actually buy private travel or expat insurance, as it's called sometimes, to obtain a visa or even enter certain countries. So fortunately, there are companies like Insured Nomads to help us with this. Not only do they have excellent coverage and great prices, but they're also providing a first-class experience with additional perks and best-in-class technology via their app. It's an amazing experience. I can't recommend it enough. Now, this is a company that was built by world travelers for world travelers. So they know what it's like to find yourself in a difficult medical situation abroad, and they want to keep you from having that same bad experience. So the next time you're planning a trip abroad, whether it's for a week or a lifetime, check out Insured Nomads via the link in the show notes. Hey guys, if you're still around and enjoying this episode, then I think you might actually like our once a month newsletter as well. If you'd like to sign up, just open up the show notes of the episode you're currently listening to, scroll down, and look for aboutabroad.com/newsletter. It takes about 30 seconds to sign up. It's a fantastic way to support the show, and I think you'll be pleased with the information that we provide every month as well. Thanks a lot for listening. Hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. I think it's pretty idyllic, and I would imagine for a lot of people like pretty inspirational to see like what you've built for yourself. Do you ever take any time to like really reflect on that and realize the life that you've created?
That's a very funny question because yesterday, literally, we were just sitting in the park, just soaking up the sun after we have a friend who's visiting from the States, and he's more into, I don't know how you call it, like he's more into like he goes deep into your soul and would make you want to reflect, okay, you're doing good, you're doing great. Because I haven't actually looked back and see from a bigger picture or from a bird's eye view on how the impact to my fellow Filipinos. Because again, I go back to my why every time that I feel down, every time that I feel happy, I always go back to my why. At the end of the day, they spend time with their family members. They can go to Zambales or to a beach with their family members, and that makes me happy.
Yeah. I hope you do take some time to reflect on that because we are really hard on ourselves when things don't go right, when we don't succeed, when we make a mistake, and then we don't take a lot of time and energy often to go, damn, I kind of did it. All right, like I arrived to where I wanted to be, and I should take some time to revel in that. So yeah, kudos to you and for doing that because it sounds pretty inspirational to a lot of people listening out there. From a business owner's standpoint, like entrepreneur, especially building location independence, do you have any advice? Like, does anybody ever ask you do you have any advice for them? And if they haven't asked you before, I'm asking you now for the first time. I'd be curious to hear what you advise.
I think someone asked me that already before. So I always say, because before the pandemic, they would say, oh my God, how can you travel? How can you be a digital nomad? Digital nomadism, like before pandemic, it's like cool. But now companies would allow people to travel, work from home, and it gives them more opportunity to see the world. So my advice is if they want to work remotely or planning to work remotely, is to gain as much skills as they can. So even if you're an engineering graduate, you can actually do an AutoCAD and you can be sitting in Barcelona, in one of the squares there doing AutoCAD, but still enjoying the city. So learn as much as you can, acquire as many skills as you can, because that's going to be super helpful, especially that there's no way but up. Like now we're in Web 2, then we're in Web 3. So it's always like onwards and upwards. So you gotta be okay with a change.
Yeah. Something also that comes to my mind that like is reflected in your story is sort of taking this leap of faith and being willing to maybe take a step backwards, because I mean, you had what I imagine was sort of a thriving career already. You were probably pretty comfortable if you're traveling around with one of the big accounting firms, staying in Macau from time to time, Hong Kong, being a director of marketing. Like you kind of had it already set and you were willing to make a sacrifice and build something bigger. And I don't know if that is all true. That's what I perceive.
That is way before I got burned out. So I used to work for Citibank.
Mm-hmm.
I used to work for Citibank in the marketing department. So I was handling credit cards. So came to a point, it was my third year, that I was no longer happy. And in a Filipino culture, you cannot quit your job, tell your mom that you're moving outside of the country. They'll think that you're crazy. They'll think that, oh, you're just going to stay here. Then what are you going to do with your life? Can you get a real job or just another job? But I have saved up for this money and I said, you know what? I'm going to quit this job. I'm not happy anymore. I was crying literally every night and I can't sit still in my office. I can't sit still because you're looking at the clock and oh my God, it's not yet 5 p.m. Come on. So that was the ticking point that I'm no longer happy. I just need to trust myself to have that leap of faith. And I was planning to move to Bali, Indonesia. I already put a deposit because I just want to have a break until I'm ready again to have a job. So I have saved up for, I think, 6 months so that I can stay there. And then my goal was like, okay, 5 months, I'm going to get another job. But since I took that leap of faith, that's when I met the owner. I think it's a VP or owner of the accounting firm in Indonesia. So it's like, if I did not take that leap of faith, then I would always just going to be stuck in a hamster wheel, which unfortunately, I can't blame, like some of my friends are still stuck in their own bubble. But just looking at them and realizing that they just have to make the decision that would change their life.
Yeah. Is it you mentioned specifically the Filipino culture earlier. Like you said something earlier where you were like, in the Filipino culture, you can't just quit your job. And so like, can you elaborate on that? Like what is the mindset there? Because I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. So in a Filipino culture, after you study, you get a job, you get married, you have babies, and that's the whole perfect situation that a parent would want for a kid. And as a female and planning to live somewhere else and quitting my job, my mom thinks that I'm crazy. And to be honest, I did not ask for her permission that I'm going to be traveling. I just did it. And when I was outside of the country already, I sent a picture. I said, I think my wings were not clipped. Something like that. Like no one's going to stop me from doing this. And another thing about the leap of faith is that if you take that chance, but you're not committed to it, you're going to end up on the same, either like situation A, go back to situation A, or it's going to be situation B. So you're just going to be like, okay, you've decided to have this path. Oh shit. Sorry. So, oh my God. Yeah. But let's just go in, whatever it is, it's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. Yeah. And it's also similar to other neighboring countries in Asia. Say, for example, Japan. Mm-hmm. So they're not allowed to leave their parents' house until they get married, or until the other half would ask for the girl from the parents' house. So that's the only time that they can leave their house. Similar to Thailand, because we have that mindset that if you work in a very big firm, in a corporate job, wearing suit, high heels, and you look perfect. That's success for them. That's what defines success for them. But I think it's also because of the influence of the social media that, it inspired me to travel as well. And that's also how I met Drew. We met in Bangkok travel blogging conference in 2015. There's always a conference called TBEX Asia, which my friend runs, and they have this in different countries. And that time, that's when before I planned to live in Indonesia after I quit my job. So that was like the gap in between. And that's when I met Drew, and we were like, oh my God, you know what? You want to save up together? Let's just travel together. We did not even know each other. And we just decided to travel to Australia, to Fiji, Vanuatu. And that's how we get to know each other.
No better way to get to know each other than jumping into world travels, right?
Oh yeah, I have a lot of friends. Well, I can name some of them who broke up because after they have traveled, they have separated ways because they can stand each other.
I had someone tell me one time, actually, they were like, I was going on literally a 1-week trip. Like this was back in like normal working days. And I had someone say, I was like, my wife and I were going to Italy, I think. And she was like, she was like, I can't believe you guys can travel, just the two of you like that. She's like, my husband and I would kill each other if we traveled together for a week. And I remember thinking like, oh, that's really sad. But also like, I think it is a reality for a lot of people, and couples like you and Drew and like my wife and I, like we're just kind of like perpetually traveling together. And I don't know any other way to do it, honestly. Like it's what lights us up. And so it's
addicting.
Just, it is addicting. And it's even sweeter sharing it with someone else, I think.
Oh, definitely. We would take trips. So I do solo trip from time to time. He does solo trips time to time as well. So we also have our own life.
Mm-hmm. That's important.
I don't know if it makes sense, but like I also want to make sure that my love for travel is still within me, not just stuck between, we travel together in a relationship, but also like I want to like rekindle the spark every time. Went to Koh Samui. That was the first island I went to, Thailand, and it's just ignites you more that, okay, oh my God, I've grown so much. I've literally have been changed. My life has changed since then. Like back then I was so young, don't know how to decide for myself. Parents, my family were mad because again, the culture, they were expecting that I'm going to be also in the same hamster wheel, but
yeah, sometimes you got to leave the hamster wheel behind. I mean, to be fair, it's not a terribly or abnormal story in the sense that like there are a lot of countries have like very firm traditions and expect a certain flow for their kids and like what that's going to look like after college or beyond. And it varies country to country, but like a lot of times the people that I've had on this show, I know my experience as well, like you break that mold. And I love your analogy to like having the wings clipped or not clipped, and you break that mold and it freaks people out. Like they go like, what are you doing? You're this isn't the path that everybody else is doing. You're making a bad decision in terms of your career. You're sacrificing this. You're not having kids when everybody else is having kids, or whatever the case may be. There's lots of like molds being broken for people that are going off and living, lives that take them abroad to foreign countries. And it happens for various reasons. It can be love or lust for travel or just an experience. But most people like yourself, I think they come on, the show, they talk about their experience. They've had something like that. And then they say like, I wouldn't change anything. Like it was kind of hard to have that conversation with mom or to quit that job or to sell that house or whatever. But they're ultimately happy and living the life that they really wanted to create for themselves.
Oh yeah, definitely. And also it's not only for those who loves to travel, but also those who does not or who hasn't realized yet that there's a whole world out there, and that can shift their perspective 360. They just have to go out there. I think it's because of the expectations of people, and also we think that for some reason you have to follow what the traditions are.
Yeah.
And breaking that, they think you're crazy. But once you've proven to them that you're okay, you're not dead, you're not airlifted to go back to your country, then you're fine. So just take a lot of courage to say, yeah. I'll travel, I'll go.
I think it's really helpful because I see the demographics of the audience, where they come from, like geographically. And I know there's people listening right now that come from countries where it's also very traditional. You stay close to the home. And the people in the US, a big percentage of the audience is from the US. It may be kind of hard to understand like how deep those roots run in a lot of countries. Like we're when we're 18, we're told to like get out and stand on your own 2 feet. You've probably already had a couple jobs and like have been like, you're expected to kind of cover yourself at that point. And like there's a lot of cultures out there where it's totally normal to live with your parents until you're in your 30s or until you get married, or well beyond that, and there's very tight family bonds there, and so those expectations are even deeper. Like I've been blown away by that, and I've had that experience of living amongst people like that many times now, and I'm still kind of blown away by it because there's a normalcy that's baked into what we expect, and so it can be kind of hard for someone that hasn't had that experience. But I know a lot of people that are listening are coming from places where they're like, that sounds like me. Like I have this desire to travel. I want to go just like move to Bali for a while, but like I can't do that. So I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, I also think that not only just by jumping the leap of faith or that leap of faith, but also having a plan. So before I quit my job, I made sure that I have X amount. There is a rule for that. So I think it's like how many months you have to save if you want to travel for X amount, or you can, waitress, or you can do bartending. I have a friend from Singapore who travels babysit cat, or it's called cat sitting. So she can stay into these like fancy places, fancy condos to babysit a cat. And that's awesome.
Is she using Trusted House Sitters? Do you know? Is it there's a website called trustedhousesitters.com? Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think that's it. It's like for the paw. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, it's an awesome service. I mean, for both sides of the coin. Like, so I've used it to have somebody come stay and watch Coda, and they get to stay in your place for a month or however long you're going to be gone, and you get free pet sitting. And I mean, and I know people that like perpetually live like that, like your friend. They're just like, oh yeah, we're going to go live over here and take care of somebody's cat in Paraguay for a month or whatever.
It's so cool. And sometimes if the person who requested you to stay in their house to babysit a cat loves you, and sometimes it's a family, or like what she had told me that it was a senior of FOC in Hong Kong, they would fly her out because they feel comfortable for her to babysit on a cat. So sometimes I would call her, hey, do you want to have dinner on Friday? She would like, let me see my book. After she said, oh no, I'm babysitting this, they're flying me out. That was like, God, so nice. I didn't know that can be a job.
What a life. Oh man. Some animal lovers out there are going, that is the dream right there. That's my mission in life. That's my why. It's taking care of animals and traveling.
Yeah. Like you can just go to Trusted House Sitters or any platform similar, and maybe that can be the start.
Yeah.
For that, to see the world.
Yeah, it can be. There's a lot of different ways to get your foot in the door. I wanted to ask you, I forgot to ask a couple questions about Philippines, and I know we're running up on time, so I want to make sure I get a few things in here real quick. Is it are there any places in particular where you feel would be very like expat friendly? Or, like imagine people that are listening right now are probably thinking like, okay, cool, Philippines sounds nice. It's a destination I've been interested in. Like, where might someone go if they were going to spend some significant time? We know a little bit about Manila from like a business standpoint, but like, I don't know, are there any other places you would say like definitely put these places on your list?
Yeah, I would say Siquijor. So Siquijor it's a very magical island. A local lives there. There's only a few hotels. So if you're kind of a tourist that would want to see, the real life in a province, then you can stay there. And sometimes people would host you. Like even if they don't know you, they would be like, "Oh, do you want to sleep in our bed, but we'll sleep on the floor." Just to make you comfortable. There's also Boracay. Boracay, I've mentioned that is a party island, also very tourist friendly, very, very tourist friendly. And we also have Romblon. Romblon is during World War II, there's a sunken ship there that you can dive. There's still some pieces of like the Japanese stuff that some people find and would take it with them. And we also have Batanes, which is, they tag it as New Zealand of the Philippines because it looks like New Zealand. I mean, it looks like Queenstown. Very beautiful. They have lighthouse there, a lot of cliffs, mountains. We just don't have snow. That's it. We can't offer snow. That's
the one thing you're missing in the Philippines. I think we can deal with that.
Yeah, we don't have snow. So, but I think that each and every island has distinct like features, or it's very different from one another, different locals and different way of living. Very, very interesting. So I think any island, you can just like start on a map which island you want to go to. I bet you're going to be safe.
Nice. Okay. Good to know. Good to know. And how do you, and what's the normal method? You mentioned boats earlier. Like, do you fly between the mainland and the islands? Or let me rephrase that. If I was going to the Philippines, my first thought would be I'm going to put in my origin, and then I'm going to put in destination Manila, and then I'm going to figure it out from there. Is that what you would do?
Yes, correct. But there are airports in the main city centers. But if you want to spread out or go to, like, for example, Siquijor to Boracay, you have to take a boat because there's no way that you can, go from one place to another. So it's exciting, very exciting. And the boats there, it's like a bamboo boat. So I think for tourists, they love that different kind of yacht.
I want to sail on a bamboo boat to a Philippine island. That sounds epic. So if I land in Manila, like, am I then taking a boat out to one of these islands that you just mentioned?
Oh, no, you can fly. So you can fly from Manila to there are airports in every city business district, but any way outside of that city, like for example, Phoenix. So they would have one in Phoenix, and then if you're going to go to Scottsdale, then you have to take a boat to that area.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
It's hard to drive. We don't have that like in America. You can just drive anywhere. There, it's not because.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm imagining that lifestyle of like being just like, oh, I got to take a boat over to this place today. Where do you go to book boats? Like I could go to kayak.com to book my flight there, but then once I get there, actually two parts to that question. Are there, for local airlines, is there anywhere like an airline or a website that you recommend using? And then same question for boats.
Yeah, so for airlines, I just go directly. So there are only Cebu Pacific and Philippine Airlines. So there's kind of like they're the largest, or maybe they're the only ones of airlines that in the Philippines. And for both, normally you ask a local because they don't have website. You would call someone a local. Ask them, hey, where is the port? Where can I, queue to get my tickets? So Philippines is not yet there, but hopefully.
Cool. Okay. And then you mentioned asking a local. So language, English, you're fine with English, right?
Yes. Oh, definitely. That's included in our curriculum.
Awesome. Yeah. Because you speak like her, like there, I would have no idea you grew up anywhere else. And when I interact with the team, I always feel that way as well. But is it true that also Spanish is like a common language to learn because of like the connection to Spain back in the day? Or is that a falsehood?
Oh, no, that's right. So we call it la mesa, cuchara, tinidor, fácil, difícil. So because of the colonization, so they have kind of forced for the older people to learn, the teachers to learn Spanish so that it can be taught generations to generations. And there is a town in the south of Philippines. It's called Zambales, and they speak Chavacano. So that is like kind of Spanish in their local dialect. But if you go there, you fly to Zambales, bienvenidos is the first, is the first word you're gonna see in the airport. And they speak more Spanish, and that's the region that I can tell that speaks until now fluent Spanish.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I had some Spanish friends that traveled there. They don't speak English, and they told me they were like amazed that they could speak Spanish. Like they were like, we pretty much just got around with Spanish. They know some English words, but like they were like, we pretty much just got around with Spanish. Like enough waiters and waitresses or whatever, like they were able to get by with Spanish. I thought that was super cool.
Yeah, I started counting not 1, 2, 3, but uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco. We started counting that. So in my region where I grew up, that's also one of the bases of the Spaniards before.
Yeah.
So kind of influenced a lot on the region where I was born in. So it's a lot of culture. I think it's so cool that if I go to Zambales, we can just speak Spanish. We can just get by. We call ice yellow.
Really?
We call ice yellow. We call corn maíz. So you'll get by.
This is super fascinating. Yeah, this is amazing. It's like a little melting pot. Is there anything else you would want to share about the Philippines? Anything you would want people to know before going? Good, bad, and different? Anything we didn't touch on yet?
The good thing about the Philippines, Clemmy, the people, very welcoming, always smiling, always even if a home would be flooded by typhoon, they would be like, okay, we'll build again. The next day, they're resilient. Filipino people are very resilient and hardworking. And there are also like party cities in Manila that there are a lot of speakeasy bars. So scavenger hunts. So it's very fascinating. And The bad thing about Philippines, the heat, the humidity.
Maybe typhoons, but heat and humidity.
Oh yeah, typhoons. But other than that, I think none. Politics now is very good. We have a new president. I know you've heard, I don't know if you've heard stories about the previous one, but I think, now is, we're in a very good position, and they are really like pushing for more budget, to promote tourism, because we miss tourists there. Like, yeah.
The whole region's been rocked by pandemic, so bad. I mean, tourism's such a big part of the economy, and the world shutting down hurt a lot.
And it's a digital nomad hub.
Yeah.
So Philippines, Manila, it's a hub. You're gonna meet a lot. There's a lot of expats there. So diaspora, Americans there, or Europeans, one of the largest in the Manila district. So you're not going to be lost. You're going to have friends.
On that note, if you don't mind me asking, I just think it's kind of interesting because I think, like you mentioned Bali, I think Thailand, maybe even Vietnam, Cambodia, like these islands or these places are a bit more like top of mind for your entry level digital nomad, I feel like. And I feel like the Philippines is one of those like up and comers on that list. Do you feel that way as well? And do you have any idea why that might be or what, like what's to come, what people are missing?
Yeah, I think that's a very good entry point, because you can just take a bus from Thailand to Cambodia. Cambodia is now becoming also a hub. Like, they have their internet is way better compared to 2 years ago. Vietnam, there's a lot of coffee shops that, like, you cannot believe how blazing fast their Wi-Fi is, because they want digital nomads to go there and stay there. You can even sleep there, I think, because they love hosting people, and they also don't want to get left behind. So if that's revolution right now, then they would ride it. Indonesia has always been a digital nomad OG, as I would say.
Yeah.
And it's very, very cheap to get around Asia. So if they're starting somewhere you can live in Philippines for, I would say, like $5 a day if you're not going to do shopping. So you can you can even be your friend for a soda for that kind of money.
Really? That's something we didn't really talk about, the cost of living. I think I don't love like spending too much time on like, oh, it's cheap to live here or whatever, but I think it's obvious, an obvious benefit for people who are traveling on a budget, like to know that there's places like this that have this beautiful landscape where you can eat really good, meet nice people, work as a digital nomad with high-speed internet, and also, by the way, you can live on $5 a day.
Right. And not only that, it's also helping people. Like, when you stay in their house or stay in an Airbnb, that's a very big help already for them, to revive after this whole pandemic. So anyone who's listening, just go to the Philippines right now.
Go help people and enjoy yourself along the way. Well, I'm going to get you out of here on this. We are starting a new tradition on About Abroad, and I learned this from another episode another podcast that I really love, and I've been wanting to introduce it here on the show, so we're doing so today. We have asked a question of a previous guest who that question is now being presented to you. You will leave a question for the next guest. You don't know who you're asking, so it's
that's so cool.
Random question that happens to be presented to you. Sometimes it'll be relevant, sometimes it won't, but this time I believe it is. So I am going to pull up the question right now and ask you, and we'll hear your answer. So, what is one piece of advice you would give to yourself prior to starting your abroad journey? If you could go back in time, that is. So if you could go back and tell yourself, what would you give Deanna? What advice would you give to Deanna before you unclipped those wings?
Oh, there's just one thing that comes to my mind. Don't overthink. I overthink stuff, so it prolongs my decision. If I have just done it like 2 years before that, then I think it could have been, should have been, would have been, but not to overthink things, and do not listen. Stop listening to what other people would say, because at the end of the day, it's just you who's going to live your life, and the happiness is your responsibility. Your happiness is your responsibility. So
it's fantastic advice. Just take the leap and go. Don't live your life for someone else. It's a big world, a lot to see. So it'd be unfortunate not to live it for someone else. So great advice. I look forward to reading your question to the next guest. We'll gather that from you afterwards. Thank you, Deanna, so much. This was awesome. I feel like it was just two friends chatting, and it's amazing that we don't get to do this that often, but it was super fun for me. So hope you had a good time as well.
Thank you. Hope to see you in the Philippines. The team is waiting.
We're coming. We're going to do it. Thank you again. Adios, and appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Chase. Have a good day.
Thanks for tuning in today from wherever you are in the world. Once again, I'm Chase, and this has been another episode of About Abroad. For those of you wondering how you can best support the show, I have made it super simple for you. Just go over to the show notes of the episode that you just finished listening to and click on one of the two following links. aboutabroad.com/newsletter to get our monthly newsletter, no spam, guaranteed, or ratethispodcast.com/aboutabroad, where you can quickly and easily leave a review for the show. It's not just important to me, it also helps more wanderers just like you find us. Finally, don't forget to subscribe on your podcast platform of choice, and we will see you again next week. Thanks again. Hasta luego, amigos.